It was one of my artsy New Year's resolutions this year to try out gouache. And now, I've got 2 pounds of it. Sure hope I like it. Hello, I'm Zakira and welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I will be trying out a brand new medium for me, gouache. And at the same time I'll also be giving my review on this Himi jelly gouache set. I'm going to be giving my detailed analysis and first impressions and doing a little painting demo. So that's good for the intro. Great segue. And let's get into it. So you may have heard of this particular brand of gouache before, as it was quite popular amongst the online artist community and particularly on YouTube. Just about like a year ago, a lot of people were reviewing them. But this particular set that I'm reviewing is relatively newer. It's very big, it has 24 colors, and also includes a 3-piece brush set and a mixing palette. And the first thing I'd like to mention before we get into the paints themselves is that the packaging. I'm kind of a fan of this packaging, not gonna lie. I mean, it's really just a plastic box, but it's really sturdy, it locks out the air really well, and nothing is moving around when it's all closed. It really feels like a brick. Speaking of which, like I mentioned, this set is big and heavy. I actually weighed it on a scale because I'm weird like that and I'm curious about these things. And the whole set weighed over 2 pounds. So when I first received it, I was kind of surprised at just how substantial this set is. And considering the price point, I really was pleasantly surprised at just how much paint you get. Each jelly cup themselves also comes inside of a very sturdy hard plastic cup with 30 milliliters of paint each. So the first thing I did was, of course, open the paints. This is probably the most signature part of these jelly gouaches, because rather than the gouache coming inside of regular style paint tubes, they come inside of little jelly cups. Hence the name, jelly gouache. So you get to peel off those lids and get that satisfaction going. Delicious. If you're like me and you grew up going to Chinatown now and then and got those little fruity bite-sized Jello cups, then you will definitely recognize the shape of these paint cups. They're very nostalgic. But despite how delicious these paints may look in appearance, the smell will probably deter you from eating it, because, you know, in case you needed a deterrent. They do not, don't get me wrong, they don't smell particularly awful or strong. The product description also says that they are non-toxic, which I am inclined to believe. But it's just that there are a lot of paint cups and they're all open, so once you get them all open in that enclosed box, every time you go to pop that box lid off, you're just gonna get this just a little bit of a whiff, being like, oh yeah, that's paint. Some of the lids were harder to open than others, but none of them were a problem for me. I also arranged the colors in a way that kind of made sense to me in the box, and then I got to swatching the colors. So, full disclaimer, this is the first gouache set I have ever owned. It's a completely new medium to me. I have done research and I've been wanting to give gouache a go for a while now, but I can't actually compare these paints to other gouaches out there because I never used them. But what I can give is my honest impressions and experience coming from a first-time gouacher. And the first thing I can say about these paints is that I really love the texture. It's super smooth and creamy, and I know you're supposed to use gouache with water, similarly to watercolors, so that's what I did. But I'd say that's probably definitely the biggest learning curve for me when it comes to working with these paints, is just figuring out how much water to use. It definitely took me a couple of swatches before I could get that good consistency so that it's not too sticky and dry, but also still retaining that full opaqueness and coverage that I wanted for the swatches. And I found that all you really need is to have a fully wet brush and then just sort of lightly mix that water into a tiny spot on the surface of the paint cup, and that was it. Now, along with the initial swatch test, I also did a second swatch sheet. That's very difficult to say. For a lightfastness test, because this is probably one of the biggest questions I've seen about this paint, and that is whether or not they are light fast. Do they fade over time? Are they going to lose their color? And there really is no information anywhere that I could find about it, so I figured, why not just do my own test? What I did was cover half of each swatch with a thick piece of chipboard, and then I taped the whole page to the sunniest south-facing window in my house. The chipboard will preserve the original color, and you'll be able to see how much change the UV from the sunlight caused to the colors. And I will be keeping it there for around a month, at which point I will make a new video to show the results. Stick around. This video is actually going up pretty late itself, so the test results should be coming in just a couple of weeks, but I don't know, I might need some time to like put the video together, so like stick around, subscribe, hit that bell, self-promotion over. Okay, this is a technique I have tried before for testing lightfastness, and it works really well. Now, seeing as gouache is a totally new medium to me, I still wasn't feeling totally comfortable with jumping into a full illustration right away, so to help me get more of a feel for these paints, I did a tiny series of doodles. I categorized them into things that are red, things that are yellow, things that are blue, and things that are green. This way I could also get a better impression of the colors. I did a little bit of color mixing to get the yellows and blues that I wanted, and I found that these paints mix together really well. As someone who is notorious for struggling with color mixing, I actually found this medium to be relatively easy. I guess it's because it's opaque, so it's a lot easier to tell what color you're getting because the color in the mixing palette is going to look almost exactly how it looks on the paper. As for the mixing palette itself, fairly average. It's just a regular slick plastic palette, not the best for paint mixing, but definitely adequate, and this palette is very large, so there's a lot of space to mix. As for the brushes, I like them. I am by no means a brush expert. I have only used like 2 paint brushes in my entire life, so I know next to nothing about them, but I can say that with these brushes, I had no problems. I had no particular struggles with them, other than that they will definitely not stay white, let me tell you. They will get stained in 2 seconds, but I really don't care about that, so good brushes. The paper I'm using is my go-to 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. If you're curious about any of the materials I'm using in this video, by the way, I will have them all listed below in the description box. So the biggest thing I took away from doing these doodles is just how vibrant these colors are. They are very saturated. I mean, they're like popping off the page here, yet they're still very pleasant to look at. I've had mediums before in the past with very vibrant colors, just like super saturated, but sometimes there's just something about it that just isn't attractive. I don't know why. But these paints, you know, I honestly love looking at them. They feel very rich in their color. And I think these doodles ended up coming out pretty cute. I don't really know what to do with them though. And now it is time to finally jump headfirst into a full illustration. So get ready for a little behind the scenes info, but this illustration was done actually about 3 weeks after doing the doodles. And the reason was because I just fell into a couple of weeks of art block, so I didn't draw anything during that time. But this actually brings me back to what I mentioned about liking the box that these paints come in, because even after 3 weeks, all of the paints still felt almost brand new when I opened the box again. They were still wet and glossy, and you could actually see the moisture condensation collecting on the inside of the lid of the box. So the box definitely seals out the air very well when it's closed. Of course though, while you're painting, the box is going to be open, so that is actually going to be the time when your paints dry out the most. But I think if you just lightly wet the cups before storing them away, then they should keep wet until the next time you use them, even if it's some time in the future. Now, as for this illustration, since this was the first gouache illustration, I wanted to do something simple, something familiar, something comfy, and I am most comfortable and used to drawing female characters and portraits. Aren't we all? Also, it is officially autumn now. The days are getting colder. The leaves are turning all manner of red and orange. The pumpkins are arriving in our stores and in our drinks. So I wanted to draw something autumn inspired. I ended up with this girl wearing a comfy dark red sweater, which was actually inspired by a sweater I own in real life. One of my favorite sweaters, let me tell you. And she is holding something that I am now going to call fall dandelions, because I grew up seeing these things sprout up during autumn, thinking that they were dandelions, but turns out dandelions don't grow in the fall. They grow in the spring. And after doing some research, I found out that my autumn dandelions are actually called cat's ear. They look almost the same, a little different. According to my research, they've got different lobes, which I immaturely find hilarious. And their growing season is right now in the autumn. I actually picked one from my backyard today so that you guys can see. I mean, look at it. Total fall dandelion. So I guess that's why the look of these puffy little bulbs just have this really nostalgic feeling of cool weather and autumn to me personally. And I actually find that kind of cool now because it's something really unique and personal. When most people think of autumn, they think of red leaves and pumpkins. I think of lobes. Anywho, what I wanted to do with this illustration was see how much I could mimic my digital cartoony style. With that style, I use very flat colors, flat shading, and often one flat color in the background. It's a style that's very clean and also very difficult for me to replicate traditionally because of just how untextured and opaque the colors are. The only traditional medium I've found so far that works for it is acrylic paint pens, but those can be pretty darn expensive, and I would have some serious cringe if I filled in an entire background of a page with a single color using those pens. So I only use them for very small drawings with limited details. But with gouache, the major attribute that drew me to it was that it's opaque, and with this brand in particular, it comes with a lot of paint. So if it worked out, I've got a pretty darn good go-to for cute, flat, traditional artworks. Not to mention, it actually has an even bigger plus point, which is that you can mix the colors together to make your own palettes, something that you can't do with paint pens. But now, this all sounds good and wonderful, but does it actually work? Kind of, yeah, maybe, high-pitched voice? It definitely took some getting used to. Getting the flat washes of color was more difficult than I was expecting, and it really has to do again with the amount of water you use. If you put too much water, it starts to look a lot more textured like watercolor. If you don't put enough water, then it doesn't glide over the paper properly, which ends up leaving streaks. But if you do get it, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, just right, then you really can get some really nice, wonderful, flat, blocked-in colors. But not out of the woods yet. No, no. Another difficulty is that this is normal gouache, which means it can be reactivated with water once it's completely dry. And that made adding flat shading on top of the first layer of colors a lot more difficult because it would start to lift the color underneath it and mix together. There is such a thing as acrylic gouache, which is water resistant when dry, so I'm sure that would work even better for this particular style. And I mean, if you're someone who is specifically looking for a medium that can do that style, then maybe try acrylic gouache. But even with these difficulties, I was able to still get that look that I was going for, and I actually kind of embraced the fact that it was imperfect and still looked like a traditional painting. I mean, there's something about traditional art that you just can't get digitally, and it's gorgeous and it should be embraced, people. Even though at first I was like, no, I want everything to be super clean and perfect. Nah. I ended up really liking the subtle texture of the paint and brush strokes while still keeping to this very sharp, clean style. I even decided to use the paint for the line work because I wanted to keep going with that slight imperfection of everything. And after working a little bit with these paints, I can also definitely see the possibilities for more blended textured pieces, which is the style I see most people tend to paint with gouache in. They tend to mix it a lot more on the canvas and just embrace that super traditional look. So I'm definitely looking forward to exploring that style and exploring this medium a lot more and all of its possibilities. It's gonna take some time to get used to. I mean, every medium has a learning curve and this one is no different, but I am definitely feeling pretty inspired by the possibilities because I really feel like this is a medium that can traverse many different styles, from super flat and cartoony like I did here to a lot more realistic and textured and traditional. And you know, not to be super promoty, but kudos to this paint set because it's inexpensive and it has so much paint that I am not worried at all about wasting too much for experimentation and learning. So would I recommend this Himi Jelly Gouache paint set? Absolutely I would. As you saw near the beginning of this video, I am still in the midst of testing whether or not these paints are light fast, but quite honestly, even if they're not light fast, I would still recommend this paint set, especially to people like me who are still learning or just getting into the medium, because you have a lot of paint to work with, a lot of colors to work with. You won't be pressured to not waste or to be really skimpy with it. And even if your originals don't last forever, you can always preserve your pieces in other methods like scanning it in, and if you want you can even make prints like I did here. So, long story short, great set of paints. I'm very happy with them. Thank you to Mia Arts for letting me give these paints a try. Full disclosure, this video is not sponsored. I am not being paid to make this review or this video. The company was just kind enough to provide me with this paint set to try out, which I'm very appreciative of. But all of the opinions in this video are genuine and my own, and I wouldn't be recommending something to my audience unless I really did enjoy it myself, because I love you guys and I want you guys to enjoy your art journey. And why am I talking like this? So that wraps up this video. Thank you so much for watching and listening and spending some of your day with me. If you enjoyed this video, found it helpful, useful, or just entertaining, please be sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Also be sure to hit that little bell to stay notified on upcoming videos. Before you go, let me know what you thought of this video in the comments. How did you like this illustration? Have you ever tried Himi Jelly Gouache? What do you think of plant lobes? Whatever, I always love hearing from you guys. If you'd like to check out my shop or subscribe to my newsletter, all that and more can be found over on my website, zakira.com. And until next time, stay awesome, stay inspired, always. See ya!